First, make sure that the handgun is empty. Remove the magazine, check the chamber, and now we can start. First, normal disassembly, you lock the slide back, you pull the disassembly lever and release the slide lock. The slide should go forward and off the gun. We can put it away, we don't have to disassemble it because nothing changes here. On the lower part, we'll start with the disassembly lever, but first press on the trigger so it releases. This will help us later to disassemble it. Now for the disassembly lever, you are pushing it from this side, pulling it from this side, and you are twisting it. Then this block gets out and it's together with the M spring. Now it should be quite easy to push the trigger pin out. And this part that fell out, this is the slide stop. Now the only thing is left is here is trigger and the trigger bar. Now on some handguns, you can get the trigger out just by lifting it up like this, pushing it up, and then removing it from the trigger bar. The alternative is to also remove the grip plate and get access to the trigger bar, which I will show now. If you're doing this upgrade on the Arex Zero 2 handgun, removing of the grip panel will be necessary because otherwise you don't have access to the trigger bar. The Polenar Tactical aluminum flat trigger will come in a box together with a hex screw and 2 screws over here. Now the screws will have a pre-applied thread locker on them, but if you feel like they are too loose, you can add blue Loctite 243 or similar. Now before the installation, I would recommend that you make sure these screws are not protruding too much, like this and this. Before installing the trigger, you can apply some grease or oil in these 2 areas. You mount the trigger on the trigger bar and put it together in the handgun. The trigger bar has to align here. Now insert the trigger bar spring. And now you will have to install the slide stop before you install the trigger pin. The slide stop goes in this position and you can move front and back. The trigger cross pin has to go in the handgun in this orientation with the notch vertical. And if you look at these grooves, they have to be facing down. So not towards you, but down. We'll do this gradually. So first you get the pin in, so it is a bit hooked on the trigger. And now we push it across and make sure that it goes also through the slide stop. Everything seems to be operational. Now we take the locking block and the end spring in this configuration and you have to install it like this. It will not go in the first time. You have to push slide stop a bit to the side and then try to maneuver it in place. If the orientation of this pin changes, the locking block will not want to go in and in the proper position. So you can use a flathead screwdriver to change the position of the pin. The ideal position would be facing straight up in this direction. Now when the locking block is inserted, you push it down and insert the disassembly lever like this first, so it clears the spring, and then you start to twist it around and push it into the gun. And when it clicks, now this is the proper position. Now if everything is functional, you can install the grip panel. Now let's go to the adjusting part. So first, as you can see, the trigger is very far forward and we can solve this with the adjustment for the pre-travel. We'll start by cocking the hammer. And now we have access to this screw over here. Now the goal here is to back out the screw far enough that it will push the trigger in a proper position for a double action. As you can see here, the trigger is far forward and it still has some free play. We can move the trigger to the back to the point where still resets on a double action. Now we are at a position where the trigger still has a bit of play and it works normally in double action mode. If you go too far with this screw, the double action mode will not reset and you will get a single action trigger only. This screw on the top is to adjust the over travel of the trigger. So in a single action mode, when the gun is cocked, first you have this pre-travel, you have the wall of the trigger where it stops, and then you press more, it will fire. And this extra movement after it fires is the over travel. And if you minimize it on this trigger, you can get a better trigger response and a shorter reset. To reduce the over travel, you tighten this screw in a clockwise direction. If you will tighten this screw too much, this will happen. The screw will prevent you to actually fire the gun in single action. So if you come to this point, you simply unscrew this screw a bit and adjust it. When you come to a point where the trigger fires, I would recommend to still back off this screw a bit so you have some extra room for all of the safety devices in the handgun to work properly. After you're finished with your adjustments and you test out the gun on the range, I would highly recommend to put a small dab of green Loctite here on the screws, just on the outside. I would recommend Loctite 638 or just a small dab of super glue. This will keep the screws secure, but you will still able to adjust them later if needed. So, now that you have the handgun assembled, do a quick function test. Double action, it works. It resets in the forward position, which is good. Single action works. Now you hold the trigger and rag the slide. Release it slowly. Okay, so it's a short, nice reset, works perfectly, and the trigger also works. Now you engage the safety and try the double action. That's okay. And then you cock the hammer, engage the safety again, and try it like this. It also does not fire, which is okay. And that is it. You're finished. Enjoy the trigger. Thank you for watching, and that's it.